Hey guys, Jay here from Java Group with another video to assist with software development, what it all means, how it comes together, and how you can be successful. Today's video, we're going to be focusing quickly on what is an SDLC and why are they important. If you've been around IT projects at all or IT teams, even in a business capacity, you will know that they love acronyms. Generally, they're 3 letters. This one's 4 and kind of breaks tradition, but it is vitally important. And I see it go wrong so often, both with the companies that I've worked in, as well as the companies that I've consulted into. This is what will make and break a great project. This is often why businesses get frustrated or feel like they're spending excessively because they're not getting this right. So what we're going to look at covering in today's quick video is what is an SDLC, why are they important, what are the steps involved, how you can make it work for you, and how to get it right. It's vitally important. So start off with, what is an SDLC? It gets thrown around a lot. It will only be a matter of time if you haven't heard it that someone will mention that they're great at it, or they follow it, or they live, breathe, and eat it, or they're the best at implementing them. But what are they actually talking about? So an SDLC, like it says there, stands for System Development Life Cycle. It's basically the process that they go through, or anyone goes through, to develop any form of project. Software tend to use this acronym, they love it. It can be applied to any type of project. It could be applied to an auto manufacturer building your new car, or a builder, building your new home or office building, or whatever that case is. It's just a system in order and a life cycle in order to get to an end product. So as you can see on the right here, steps are plan, design, implement, test, and deploy. And we'll go through them briefly here. And then in other videos, we can extend on them, break them down, and really get into the nitty-gritty detail. So plan. This is always overlooked, especially when people are engaging external developers or really haven't been around development projects much in their life at all. The number of people I speak to that have a negative experience or a negative perception of IT and software, and just think that it's costly and you never get any value out of it. Often that's because they've looked at the plan stage. So one or two things has happened, is either the team that they're engaging has given them a great sales pitch but doesn't really know what they're doing themselves. The team that they've engaged has been battered and bruised so many times with asking for dollars and time to plan, and been constantly told no, they don't bother. Or lastly, the team that they've engaged say that they want to spend time and money on planning, and when the business thinks, well, I'm not actually getting a tangible output, I'm not getting something I can touch, something I can click on, something I can feel, no, not interested. It is vital. Like I said, we'll get into it in more detail later, but you have to do this first. When it comes to IT development, people seem to have a different perception to anything else. But when you go to buy a new car, you plan for what that car will look like. You plan for what you expect it to be. You talk to your partner or yourself or your parents or your friends, whoever that might be, your dog, about why do you need a new car? What is the value you're going to get out of this new car? Maybe you've just had another child, so you need something slightly bigger. Maybe you've just picked up a new hobby, which means you need a lot of boot space, for example. Maybe you need to downsize because everybody's leaving home, or you've got a small parking garage. But there's always a value benefit attached to it. The scope. You will scope that out and you will budget it as well. You will look at it and say, well, I can only afford to spend $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 on this car, and it must have these certain criteria. It must have Apple or Android CarPlay. It must have 5-star crash rating. It must have leather seats. Whatever that situation is, you will decide on a scope of what that vehicle looks like and a budget, generally before you even start looking. The available timeline and resources. So you will work out, maybe there's a time crunch on this. Maybe you need the car by next week, 2 months from now. Maybe you don't care how long it takes, and the resources available. So what car yards are within your reach. Who can you go and see? It's the same with a house, a build, or anything of that nature, a renovation, anything like that. You will always determine the value. Why do I need to upgrade my bathroom or my kitchen? What is the scope? So what has to be included in that? How much am I willing to spend? How long am I willing to take it? And where am I going to resource it? How am I going to resource it? Where am I going to get the bits from? When it comes to IT software development, everybody's got a great idea, but no one's really willing to sink into the planning or understands it well enough. I've seen it really poorly executed from top tier vendors coming in and consulting and just doing a really bad job. I've also seen it from the bottom tiers as well. Equally, I've seen it just as badly done or badly resourced, badly invested in as the businesses who are paying money for these software projects. It's easy to get excited and want to rush into it and be able to see your first screen and click around and show all your mates your new app, but you need to plan first. Like I said, we'll get into it more further. Design. So this is the first glimpses where it comes to life. This is where the rubber starts to become a reality, and you start to think, wow, this is what it looks like. Again, coming back to the car analogy or the house analogy or whatever it is, we invest time in designing it. You'll go onto a automotive website and you'll pick through the colors and the options, and you'll have a look at the interior and the exterior and you know what paint goes well with what wheels. Do I want a black roof or a white roof? Do I want a sunroof or not? Does the brown leather look better than the white leather? Whatever it is, we all sit there and invest that time in doing that, and that's where you're starting to get that picture. You're starting to understand when this becomes a reality, when I get the call from the car yard to say my car is ready to be picked up, what am I expecting to see when I get there? What features and benefits am I expecting it to have? How am I expecting to interact with it? Does it have a big touch screen in the middle? Does it have lots of buttons and knobs and those sorts of things? With a house, it's the same. You don't build a house without first seeing either a display home or a plan or a 3D rendering or a concept. And often, you know, back in my grandparents' day, it was just draftsman's drawings, sort of one-dimensional drawings, maybe a sort of a cardboard mock-up of what it would look like. Now we have these really rich and powerful tools where you can do a 3D walkthrough of the building before the first piece of dirt is dug on the block. So we're constantly designing, but yet again, often this is overlooked, especially around how's the user going to interact with it, how's everybody going to work with it. And it can get rushed through to just say, well, no, just give me something that I can actually start using. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how people are going to interact with it. I don't care if it's going to work for my demographic or not. I don't care how detailed or not detailed the information I've provided you to is. And I don't want to sit here and be asked, how am I going to pass this, or how am I going to be able to tell you that it is done? Don't miss this. The design phase, like I said, covers those graphical interfaces and what it looks like and everything like that, but it also covers that list of exactly what it is. Like coming back to that car analogy, you go through and you do all your visual bits and you get that mental model of what the car looks like, but you now also have a list of all the different things, okay? So I said that it needed to have leather and not cloth, so that's a requirement there. So when I come to look at that car, when the dealer says to me, come and pick it up, if I'm looking at it and it has a cloth interior, it's a fail. That's not the car I ordered. I wanted crystal white paint or a black, a deep black or something like that. If I show up and the car is green, again, that's a cross. It wasn't a requirement. It's not an acceptance criteria. It doesn't it doesn't match what I need it to do. And we're really specific about it. When you buy a car or when you look at renovating or building a house, we're really specific about the tapware, the lights, the switches, the doors, the paint color. Often people rush this step and we are not specific with what we want or what we expect or how we're going to pass it, how we're going to complete the definition of done in the design phase of a software project. People just rush on, and again, is often driven by both sides. Often the business doesn't want to spend the money sitting down or doesn't have the time to sit down and be able to provide the information. And then again, from the other side, a lot of businesses just race straight into the delivery aspects of things. Implement. Okay, so this is where it starts to get serious. This is generally where most people will go to immediately. Give me something. I want something now. Um, Show me how it's going to look. Let me touch on it. The warning here is this catches a lot of people off guard. When implementation starts, generally they're doing the foundational work. So the first couple of days, weeks, months, depending on the size and the scale of the project, they're generally just laying those foundations. They're getting everything behind the scenes ready. And as a layperson entering into this, or as a non-highly skilled technical person, you're generally not interested in terms of what database technologies are we using? Where's it being hosted and managed? How do they all interact? What's my replication? What's my redundancy? All of these things are getting established to start with, to build this framework, to build this scaffolding. And generally, most people who are engaging in the software development lifecycle, or are paying the bills therefore, or asking for the product and the outcomes, generally aren't technical enough for that to matter. So in those first phases, there's really not a lot to see, and people can get lulled into a false sense of security of, oh, this is easy. They don't really need much input for me. I didn't do much in the design and I didn't do much in the planning. What was Jay talking about? This is crazy. But all of a sudden it changes. So at some point they finish laying the foundations and they start actually committing things that are tangible, can be used, and can be done. And this is where most projects go to custard. This is where people get poor perceptions of the development industry, or engagement with it, and this is where the issues happen. So I've got a note there. It starts slowly, but the pace picks up and it can get out of control really, really quickly. And if you fail to plan and you fail to design, this is where it's constantly going to bite you. What you're doing in this phase is the team are delivering on what you planned and what you designed and said was necessary, and that's it. If it's open to interpretation, if it is vague, if it is not done well and it's still in your head and you haven't translated it into the specific work items and the agreed work items that are going to be delivered, what you are returned back is often disappointing, doesn't meet the product, and needs to be reworked because it's not quite good enough, or it's just not even where you thought it was. This is where costs all of a sudden start blowing out, because rework costs money. You can't fail something. You can't say it is wrong. You can't say they missed a delivery, and you can't blame the execution team if you haven't given them clear enough instruction. If you're building, you're buying your car, and you just go into the guy and you say, I want a blue car with black interior, and you pay you say, and I'll agree to pay you when I pick it up. And then he rings you 2 days later and says, I've got the car. Now, mentally in your mind, perhaps you're thinking of a baby blue car with a black leather interior, and that car is an SUV because you've got 3 kids who are all sporty and you need the room and the space. And you show up, and what they have there is a compact car, which is midnight blue. It's almost a black color, and it's got black cloth interior. Now, it doesn't meet anything that you wanted. It doesn't meet any of the requirements that you mentally had, but you didn't articulate it. You didn't plan for it. You didn't design for it. You got what you got. And this is where the problem tends to come, is people aren't clear enough and they don't put enough effort and energy in up front, and this is where it falls over. And like I said, it picks up pace really quickly. So as the development teams start to deliver more and more functions, there's more and more layering going on, and things are getting built on top of other things. And that's where it starts to get really hard for you to engage and to test it and to tick it off and to make sure that it's all working seamlessly together. And what happens on the first page and what happens on the 10th page flows and all works in the right way. So this can get out of control very quickly, and it does need your attention. So when it's slow in the start, it's always good to plan how you're going to interact with it, who's going to resource it, what's going to go on later. Test. Test is a big one here. So testing is really, really important. There are so many different types of testing too. So we've got here on the right-hand side, unit testing, smoke testing, integration, regression, sanity, user acceptance. just to name a few. There is so much testing that can happen. We'll dive into this in its own separate video, but once, twice, as many times as possible. You need to, you've planned well, you've designed well, the team are executing well, you need to test it. So is what I asked what I got. So did I get the right color blue? Did I get the right color black interior, or the right type? Does it have the Apple CarPlay? Does it have the big boot? Does it have 2 keys? All those sorts of things. But then you want to take it for a lap around the block. So okay, well, sitting in the car yard, it looks like it meets everything. It's the right blue. It's an SUV. It's got the black leather interior. It's okay. But can I actually drive it? And then that's when you need to hop into it and take it for a bit of a further test. This always happens, that testing falls over, isn't invested in, isn't done well enough. And then that's where things get out to the market and you have a poor user experience. Anyone in Australia, we had a census a few years ago. No one thought to do a significant amount of load testing. It didn't dawn on anybody that at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, when it was around dinner time, mum and dad were going to be home and think, oh, well, while we're cooking dinner or we've just finished dinner, let's sit down and do our census. And as a result, it crashed. There are so many other examples of things like that occurring. I was filling in a form the other day, accidentally clicked add another row, and then I couldn't delete it. And because I couldn't delete it, I couldn't proceed any further. And as a result, I ended up just leaving that website and going and doing it with somebody else. So these things only get picked up in testing, and it's the repetition and the more times you go through it that these things occur. So we'll do another separate video on this, but you need to be careful. You only get what you put in, and testing is a big example of that. Deploy. Okay, so deploy, it's go time. So this is where the final stage, this is the culmination of everything. You've been telling all of your friends, you've been telling all of your colleagues, you've been telling all of your customers that something is coming, and here it comes. You've planned for it, you've designed it, the team have executed, all of the testing has showed that it's paid off, and you're ready to roll. It's not as easy as clicking a button and it's done. It is a lot harder than that, and this is the trick that people fall into. You need to test your deployments. You need to make sure you can go live. You need to understand what's going to happen there. Do we need to turn off systems? Do we need to cut customer access? Is it going to change the way our customers interact with us? And so maybe we need to give them some training or some coaching or some information in terms of it. How long is it going to take? Who's responsible for what? What happens if it goes wrong? How do we recover? All of these things need to be explored and planned for. Mock go lives should be done. You should be practicing just like fire drills. The alarm goes off, everybody goes down the stairs, organizes in rows, gets a head count. All of that seems silly until the first time there's a fire, and because you've done the drills so many times, you know exactly what the steps are, and everything goes smoothly and without a hitch. It's exactly the same here. You need to get this into production. You need to get this into customers' hands. You need to have a plan. Everyone needs to know what they're doing. Everyone needs to know who's involved and what their responsibilities are, and you need to have confidence that it's going to be done right. You have to communicate to the market how that's going to happen and how they're going to interact with it and what to expect. If it's an upgrade to an existing product and it's going to change completely, I've seen people who haven't bothered to tell their customers and then been inundated with phone calls, emails, and so forth, thinking that they've been hacked or thinking that their site's broken or not understanding what's going on, or just losing customers because they go there and think, oh, this looks different. I don't really like how this works, or I don't understand it, and then they exit out of it. You really need a high level of focus and a high level of skill involved in this step, and everyone needs to coordinate together to ensure that it goes at the right time for the team who have pulled it together, as well as the business that has paid for it, and that everybody's happy with the process. And everyone who's impacted understands how they're impacted and how they're going to benefit and what they need to do. We'll go into it further, like I mentioned, but this one is just as critical as all the other ones. It's not as easy as just picking a date on the calendar and say, yep, 12th of June is when we go. It's a lot more work than that. I've seen these be rushed. I've seen people not invest the time and effort into them. And guess what? they've generally been disasters, or a disaster waiting to happen. Okay, so that's it, guys, for the SDLC. So I hope you've learned something. So like I said, it's the software development lifecycle. There's those 5 steps there: plan, design, implement, test, and deploy, and they're all critically important. If you've got any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can drop a comment in the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more content, and I'll keep putting these out, and hopefully we can together get some information and awareness out there and help everybody. So until the next video, keep innovating, and I'll see you then.